Welcome to the GORTcoaching podcast, where we delve into the realms of coaching, therapy, and psychology. Our mission is to engage in authentic conversations that educate and inform, making insights of professionals accessible. Margriet is a seasoned psychologist, coach, and counselor with over 30 years of experience in various international business sectors. She specializes in guiding individuals through personal and professional challenges, focusing on personal growth and leadership development. She assists clients in making meaningful choices that align with their identities and motivations. She addresses issues such as career stagnation, stress, and burnout by helping individuals reconnect with their inner compass. In this episode, we talk about lessons from cognitive psychology, perfectionism, and career coaching advice for professionals, as well as mental health in general. Through her empathetic, effective, and resonating coaching, Margriet empowers individuals to navigate their professional journeys with resilience and authenticity. I saw that you were doing at the University of Leiden.
Yeah,
was it?
correct.
So you did your research also in organizational psychology, correct?
Yeah. So I have a master's in labor and organizational psychology and in cognitive psychology.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting mix also, because usually people that do organizational psychology don't have such a neuro-focused background. So are there any things that particularly interest you of, let's say, the new science of neuropsychology? What are the most fascinating things?
Yeah, well, what I found very fascinating, this is something that we know since 10, 20 years or something, is the concept of epigenesis. So it means that, for instance, trauma can be, transmitted towards next generations via your genes.
Yeah.
So it also means that genes can transform depending on experiences that you have in life, whether it is as an individual or as a generation. The other thing that is very interesting is, when I studied psychology, I think at that time, at least in the Netherlands, we thought you cannot change your neural system.
Yeah.
And this has been proven it's not true. So you can change your neural pathways. And this is actually a big message, an extremely positive message, because it means that if we practice or whatever that we do in order to learn and grow, it can also have a substantial impact on your neural system, your neural pathways. So it's hope. And it also confirms my... why I always say I don't believe that only younger people have potential. Everyone of every age has potential. And for me, the whole idea about the fact that you can change your neural pathways actually confirms it. It strengthens that opinion. Yeah,
it's also interesting because when you get taught things about especially evolutionary, you also usually get taught that evolution is only something that takes place, like your genes are set up and they're all done, and that is the process of evolution is basically just from the conception and what is given to you by nature. But now we learn that a lot of the evolution actually takes place from influences that the environment actually pushes onto the person.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, for me, that's a very hopeful message. So, so that was one important discovery of neuroscience.
Nice.
Which also impacts the coaching profession, of course. And also that we now know that, like, for instance, trauma. And when I talk about trauma, I do not only talk about the severe trauma, like, for instance, PTSD or severe depression or whatever. We all have our traumas because simply it's part of bringing up. We learn, we fail, we experience bad things in our lives, but they form us in the positive sense and in a negative sense.
Yeah.
anyway, trauma we now know is also, it's settled in your body, right? So, and that is, I think, also an important message that came out of the neuroscientific research in the past decades.
Yeah. There's also the book from, I think, Bessel from
The body keeps the score.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he's a great influence. Yeah.
I think I still have to read that one, but it's on my shelf, so that's probably something I'll pick up soon.
Yeah. Well, you can also visit the YouTube videos if you want to do shorter than the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, yeah, that has been a very profound change in how we look at people, how we look at the obstacles that they carry with them. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think then when we're on the topic of the obstacles, I think what a lot of people are also currently struggling with is when they're looking for the obstacles they experience in their career life. And I know you also had a vast and extensive background into exactly this. So a question I basically have is, there are also some people that are never feeling sure in, let's say, the career they pick. So when somebody doesn't know the career they're on, what do you think is a good way for them to figure out, is this something I want to do or is this not something I should do?
Yeah, well, my biggest message is, and the first message that I like to share is just experience with your full self. What I actually want to say is feel, just feel. Because too many people, it's also, of course, how our society works. There's a lot of emphasis on your cognitive skills. So when we have the feeling that we're not really happy in our job, we tend to analyze the situation. And that's one part of the picture. But the next thing, part of the picture is also that you feel with all that you feel whether things resonate, yes or no. And I've noticed that many people, they never listen to how their body responds to what they are doing in their work, to whatever. So this is so I always like to invite my coach clients to learn to listen to your heart, for instance. Imagine yourself in a moment where you were extremely happy. Well, if I ask you to do that, not in a split second, but take the time to be a bit more mindful, maybe close your eyes, connect with that moment and re-experience it again. And you will feel all kinds of bodily sensations. Well, this is actually what you want to feel if you talk. The biggest ideal is that you feel all that in your job, in your work, in your life, I would say. So feel. That's a very important message. Feel how your body responds, what resonates, because that tells the truth. Your body tells the truth.
Yeah, I feel also many people are usually not trying to be the present, especially nowadays. It's very easy to distract yourself with all kind of sorts of social media stuff. And also many people, and me myself included, when maybe I don't sit enough with my emotions or with those things and then just try to move on to the next thing. Maybe you're busy, you're feeling stressed, and then you just do some, like, move on to the next task and you think, I don't have time to think about that. But that's actually something that we probably should do more.
Absolutely, because that's also an important message of our society that, that, I don't know how you say this in English. In Dutch, we say that our lives are makeable, maakbaar. So actually, we learn to focus on all the positive things that happen to us or the things that help us to avoid the negative emotions, like the doubts that you may have, the anxieties or fears, whatever it is. So going back to work, not having to deal with emotions like insecurity, etc. That's a normal way for people of dealing with those feelings. But indeed, the essence is be curious about it. Be curious about it.
I feel also sometimes when a lot of people sometimes also feel that you're too perfectionistic.
Yeah.
And I think at least, and you can maybe help me with this if this is wrong, but that they feel so perfectionistic because they have this one thing they focus on, and then because to numb down the rest, you just hyper focus on this kind of one task, and then this is the only thing where your like deliberate attention really goes. And would you say that is the same, or would you say maybe some people have perfectionism from a different way?
No, I think, well, you can look at it from different levels. So what you are just sharing is part of it, indeed. I find it difficult. I mean, what is perfectionism? I mean, is it positive or negative? So I always, when I have many clients who are perfectionistic. First of all, we try to distinguish what is good about it, what is bad about it, right? Because strengths and pitfalls, they go hand in hand. You can't have strength without pitfalls. Why are there pitfalls? Simply because if you overplay your strengths, they automatically become a pitfall. So this is where we elaborate first. And then second, what I have noticed in most instances, that quite often behind perfectionism, there is something like, well, one could say a limiting belief or a fear. The limiting belief is I'm only worthy of love when I deliver, when I perform. Yeah. So, and of course, as long as that works for you, that belief, that's fine. But it can become an obstacle to always see yourself in that perspective, right? And then you notice that you're getting stuck in your work because you're trying to meet so many expectations in the work. You feel stressed if you don't meet expectations. So then it's interesting to explore those limiting beliefs. What is actually behind your drive to perform in a perfect manner?
Yeah.
And then quite often you see that there are certain... Yeah, quite often it also has to do with experiences in early lifehood, in childhood. They can be messages that were passed by your parents in an unconscious way. Maybe they were the best loving parents, but maybe they also put a lot of emphasis on going to school, getting good grades, making sure, like my parents, they always said, don't go to an art academy because you can't have a decent job when you are an artist. So I was really brought up with creativity, stay far away from it, So these things form us, and they help us in a certain way to survive the world, and everything comes to us. But as said, those limiting beliefs, those messages from the past, they are quite often behind perfectionism.
Yeah.
So that is something that you can work on with a coach, for instance.
No, for sure. And what do you think is also a good way to, let's say, get more in line with your own beliefs and your own goals that you have? How can you best follow them if you're stuck like this?
First of all, you have to know your own values. And quite often people are not aware. So this is quite often what we start with is making you aware of what are your values. And it's also, in that case, it's not only a mental analytic exercise. It is, again, about feeling again. So what I prefer to do is to explore with my coach clients their values at a more unconscious, in a more unconscious way. So instead of tapping into the analytical brain, the left brain, I prefer to my coach clients to tap in their creative right brain. So visualizations, for instance, can be very nice to explore values. But I can also ask you just make pictures in the next coming weeks of everything that resonates for you. And then we're going to explore what are the common threads between all these pictures. So if you made a picture of a tree, what's so important about a tree for you? What does it mean for you? So via these, let's say, metaphors, we explore what are deeply your values.
Yeah.
So that's the starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then the next thing is that you can apply everything that came up in that exercise, everything in terms of felt values. You can put on the glasses of those values, glasses on your face, and then look through those lenses, to those glasses, to your current job or to your future dream job or future life, whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, so it almost sounds like there is a certain kind of balance you have to strike where you need to have enough space to get in touch with yourself, but at the same time, don't lose too much of the drive to, let's say, keep going at things and also get the things done. So like, I think that the question that I had when I heard this to relate it to myself is, so how, let's say, ambitious should you be when you do these kind of things? Like, because there's you want to strive for something that is authentic to yourself, but at the same time, of course, you want to have a goal. So like, what's a good balance in that way?
Yeah, well, that really depends on how it feels for you. But I agree. I mean, it's not only about making sure you're sufficiently connected with your values to what's important to you. So, well, first of all, what we do is to make a distinction between the must-have values and the nice-to-haves. Because for me, for instance, room to maneuver, space is important in everything that I do. This is a must-have. So that's also a nice exercise to do. What are my must-haves? And then most probably you come up with, let's say, 3, 4, 5 values that really should be there. And then you have the nice-haves. So that's an exercise. And then also it's important, of course, to look at the more rational arguments and considerations. So you may want to live in a certain area. You may need a certain minimum salary. I mean, of course, there are also those practical questions. It's very difficult to say where is the balance. I always say it should resonate sufficiently. Again, resonance is important. Yeah, and so yeah, so but it's good to have to be connected with the values that you have, to make the distinction between the must-haves and the nice-to-haves, and in addition, then to also look at the practical.
I think that
sides.
The problem that also sometimes can come up, and I have the same, where you have certain goals in mind, but at the same time you can forget that the goal was also happiness. Like you have to balance those things out, where I just don't want to work only to work, right? I started all of this for a specific reason. And sometimes when I feel too deep in, let's say, a job, or you're feeling, or maybe also from a place of stress, where it's really hard to find that place again, like find the purpose again, where you're doing this. And it's maybe good to always remind yourself, in a way, to think about these things and be conscious about what you do. I think there's also something that I'm struggling with in some of these situations. Yeah. But is there anything in particular where I think it could be also a nice approach to discover some way, where are my talents? Is there some tip you maybe have for that?
Sure. That's also part of the story. Your talents are most probably also the things that give you energy. So if you can use your talents, the work that uses your talents, most probably it's the work you like, right? Yeah. So you can do. Some people are really disconnected from who they are, what their capabilities are, etc. For instance, after they lost their job or whatever, other people say, there are so many things that I like, what should I choose? In all cases, it can be very relevant to do, for instance, a talent scan. There are all kinds of assessments that you can do in order to assess your talents. So that's possible. I sometimes ask people, why don't you keep a logbook for, let's say, 1 month or maybe even longer, and just write down every day what gave you energy today. Because if you just mention 3 things per day, if possible, but those things most probably are related to your talents as well.
Yeah, that is true. And then when you let's say there are some things that you find out about, you know now what is interesting to you, where the talents are. What is maybe also as a HR person an interesting way for you to develop these talents, let's say efficiently? What would you suggest?
Well, if you ask me how to develop something efficiently, I would always recommend to develop it in daily practice. So this could be a work. Someone once asked me, as an example, I need to develop my management skills because for the first time in my life, I will get a management position. This was for a new employer. So what training should I follow was the question. But for me, it doesn't make sense to do a management training if you're not in a job. So I always say, please try to develop yourself in a situation that gives the opportunity to develop and that gives the possibility to experiment with new behavior, with different behaviors, whatever.
There's basically also to look out for those situations where the opportunity kind of hands itself.
Yeah.
And then also commit to these situations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but what's the best way? I don't know what is the one best way or the most efficient way to develop. As I said, I strongly believe that if you, it's obviously my mantra, if you listen to what resonates, if you feel it, most probably that's also the place where your talents are, your qualities. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
And if you're at that place, the only thing that you have to do is make sure that you don't overplay your strength or your talent in such a way that they become your pitfall again. But
nice. Cool. No, I think it's also important that you say, because sometimes when you I know how it is, you get exciting at the beginning, you think, oh yes, let's do more than maybe I'm capable of.
Yeah.
And then you get very quickly a negative experience with it. And of course, when you start out something new, you want to keep those as low as possible.
Exactly. It's nice that you mentioned that, because that is absolutely what happens with most people when they have a new role or a new company they work for. Their motivation is extremely high when they start, and after a couple of months, the motivation really decreases because they get their first failures, they don't have all the support that they need, whatever it is. Yeah, so I think there is also responsibility for employers. I mean, if you know that this is going to happen, make sure that you drag your new employee as quickly as possible out of that situation of diminished motivation.
You don't want to lose the motivation either, right?
You don't want to lose it, no. And this is something most of us go through. So there's also, I would say, I mean, it's good to know for yourself that this might happen. But there's also a role for your manager to support you in that moment.
I think a friend of mine who's also doing an internship right now struggles with the same thing, where he went into a large corporation and he says, well, I wanted to do so many things, but there are so many processes at place and that make it really hard for me. So if you, I think, feel stuck like that in the job, like, is it probably best to just talk to your
absolutely
manager?
We should always talk. This is what I had to learn. When I started to work, I thought, my God, now they have hired me for a certain knowledge that I should have, but it's only theoretical. I don't know anything of how things work in daily practice. My first job was a research job. And to be honest, I was quite afraid to ask questions because it felt as a weakness.
Yeah.
So this is something that I guess many people who come from university or whatever education when they first start to work may face as well. Yeah. So but you need to ask questions. In order to, and anyway, just talking with the people or with your peers, with your manager is extremely important.
I think there's also a word for that where people call it nowadays the imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
is when you are at the job and you think, oh no, they hired me for this, but I have actually no idea how this is. I don't even think I deserve to be here.
I think imposter syndrome has applied for many years to me as well. Yeah, that's right. But the only thing, and so I remember well when I went to my second job, I thought, because it gave me a lot of stress not to ask questions and to pretend that I knew everything. So it caused such a amount of stress that I really decided next job I'm going to show my vulnerability, because that's it. It's about. So I decided I'm going to do it differently. If I don't know it, just ask. And the people around you, they most of the time feel fine to support you, and they even like it maybe to support you or to help you. I mean, I've never met anyone. And your manager is there as well, of course, to support you. Your manager should support you. It doesn't happen always, but yeah, no. It's This also reminds me to an interview that I saw with Dirk de Wachter. He's a famous Belgian psychiatrist, and he said we would have much less issues or much a smaller waiting list in the mental health care in the Netherlands if we would talk more with each other. If we use the people around us to reflect on certain things that bother us, but of course that also requires to show more vulnerability. But if we would do that, there would be less, maybe coaches would be less needed, psychologists, psychotherapists, whatever. So talking is extremely important. That's the message.
No, I feel like also when you start out the job, you're maybe sometimes a little bit afraid of the power situation. But I think it's also good to realize that, well, the person who hired you hired a person, and they're aware that everybody comes with their own flaws and positives and negatives. I think also when you are more authentic from the beginning in that way, it opens you more doors to also be authentic later on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And always imagine, suppose that you would be a manager. What type of how would you like to be as a manager for your staff, right? So if vulnerability is important, you have to show that as well. But it's not always easy. I have to say that as well, because there are also work cultures, company cultures that are very. Well, that may prevent people from being open and showing their vulnerability or authenticity. I mean, in my coach practice, I also meet people who find themselves in toxic environments, etc.
Yeah, I guess there must be more than people think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So an organizational culture doesn't always support talking with each other. So that is okay. So it may not always be easy, but when I speak about talking to each other, it's also about at least sharing mutual expectations. For instance, so your manager has certain expectations of you, but you also have expectations about what you need from your manager or from your team.
And those are important to express, right?
And that is important to express, absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. And I also think that when people get into new organizations, like not only is it that everything is uncertain, and I think also we want to perform at our best.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we make the best impact we can right from the beginning.
Sure.
But I think this may also not be the best strategy, because then you start out really high and then maybe you hit the plateau that we talked about, and then all of a sudden your performance goes down, and then the manager wonders, why does your performance go down?
Yeah, exactly. So, and your question is?
I don't think there was much of a question in there, but like I think it's just interesting to see how we can kind of build ourselves like almost our own prison in a way. Especially professionally, where you just you focus too much onto one thing and then you forget all about the rest.
Absolutely.
And then let's say if you want to put the question to that is, well, if you constantly struggle with having these high expectations as well, what could be maybe a good way to approach your professional career a bit more realistically?
It is interesting because most of the times when I meet people with very high expectations about themselves and about their career, it's good to explore what's behind that. And then we come again at quite often these are limiting. There are certain beliefs they hold about themselves, about the world. Only if I perform, I'm worthy of love. So it's important to see that there are also different perspectives. I think that's very important because if you have that approach, very high expectations on yourself, thinking that others also may have very high expectations about you, I mean, it's all in your head, right? So that is where coaching may be helpful to see that there are also different perspectives. You're not only your performance, you're not only your tasks. So there's much more to that.
And then getting maybe also the thoughts that are just in your head out in a safe space, because that is all something that I struggle with.
And there I come again, because quite often you have all these thoughts in your head about how you should be, what you should show to others. But again, it's important to stay connected also with the resonance, with what you feel, in order to make the distinction between, is this my rational brain telling me that I should do this, that I should do that. If I don't reach that, then I'm lousy. So,
And let's say that with those questions were kind of answered, like somebody is in a position where they're in their job, they're happy to doing it, and then they want to engage, let's say, in the corporate ladder. What could be a good way to approach that thing? Like, once you're happy and now you want to start developing in your corporate career.
Well, my first question is always, do you have any idea on what direction you want to go? Where is your ambition? Do you know what the expectations are? And not only in terms of what you have to do in that next role or in those next roles, but also what are expectations in terms of competencies that you need to have in order to get there. So that's important to know what is actually needed to get there.
I think there's also then when you need to be aware of also not just what do you have to bring to the table, but maybe also what that path will demand of you. Right?
Exactly. So and then, so a next step could be that if you know what is needed in order to get there, what is needed in terms of competencies, that you do a kind of, we call it null mating in the Netherlands, zero assessment. So an assessment of where are you now compared to those competencies. What is already present? What should still be developed? And based on that analysis, you can make a plan to develop yourself in those directions. Like, for instance, if you've never managed before, you may need to develop certain skills in relation to more strategic thinking, having overview, people management, how to foster a constructive team culture, all those. And these can all be questions for someone, let's say, who wants to become a manager.
Would you also structure then, let's say, some of the goals into some short-term and long-term goals?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's also
Absolutely. Yeah, but that, of course, also depends on the person who is sitting in front of me, because some only look one step ahead. Others have a 10-year plan. So, it depends. But sure, it's...
Nice.
And then, of course, it's also so some competencies can be developed through, for instance, coaching, maybe here and there training, but it's also interesting to see if you can mobilize relevant stakeholders in your organization to support your growth.
So that's right, like you need to also be well connected.
Yes, exactly. And also look beyond the formal structures. So I sometimes meet people who, well, their senior leaders are expected to pioneer the future, for instance, meaning that they need to look, they need to be from time to time out of the box, be able to innovate. So if you don't have a really innovative, creative, out-of-the-box personality, it may be interesting to ask your organization, isn't there somewhere, especially in corporates, there's often a possibility to attend, to be part of an innovative project. So it's not only learning in the coaching or in the training, but it's also, it's also interesting to explore opportunities in your own organization.
Yeah, like
to develop yourself.
Be aware of those kind of things. And maybe also, I think what you said is to look also into the connections you have and the connections you've made, but then look on how you fit with the strengths you maybe then have, you're aware of, and then put yourself into a position where you can thrive.
Absolutely. That's important.
Yeah. I think then also what if you're in a job where you say you don't have these opportunities? Of course, many people would think about then changing the job. Would you say that is recommended, or maybe to try to fully look into the job first and then move on?
Yeah. That's completely up to the coach client, of course. It's not up to me to say, well, move to another organization. No. So it's So quite often we start with an exploration of what is holding you there, what resonates not. What are possibilities? And sometimes the possibilities can come. So they can come in a surprising way, because I've worked with many small to medium-sized companies. They don't organizations that don't offer too many career paths,
possibilities,
or career possibilities. But if you if you are open about your career intentions, about your growth ambitions, sometimes your manager or the organization might say, "We have an idea." It's so. So I would always encourage people to explore what even though it seems like there are no possibilities, by being open about it within your organization, you can at least see if that is really the case, or that there are certain possibilities.
What are then, usually you would say, the strengths and weaknesses of a small compared to a large corporation? Because I think usually there must be some kind of trade-off that comes with either one.
So differences between Well, in corporates, you mentioned there are a lot of things are regulated in terms of procedures, processes, etc., etc. So the benefit of a big corporate is that there are quite often growth paths, career paths that you can follow. Lots of opportunities to do coaching or training, whatever. I mean, I also see that in my own coach practice. Most of my coach clients come from corporates, not from the small to medium-sized companies, unfortunately. So the amount of possibilities is a benefit of the corporates. On the other hand, the small to medium-sized companies, they offer the opportunity to have a wider range of responsibilities and tasks, to be a bit more flexible in terms of changing the content of your job.
It almost sounds like the smaller ones give you more opportunities to grow, like not necessarily to grow, but like to make your own projects kind of work out.
Of course. Of course, management should also
changes those things a lot.
Well, they should also be in favor of doing that. But there is, I guess, a bit more flexibility there. This is at least my experience. Yeah. I think that's the most important one.
No, it makes sense. And then for an example, when people are in an interview, are there some things that usually help during interviews to maybe not, let's not say stick out, but to help you feel confident in an interview and get a little bit about more of yourself into this discussion? What could help there?
Well, what I've noticed, I've done many selection interviews, thousands and thousands in my life. And what I always noticed, that people are so, that people forget to smile, to laugh, to show their enthusiasm. So, so I would say, make sure, don't overthink it. I think it's important to keep some of your spontaneity. Also, I think it's far more relaxed when you don't prepare too much in a selection interview. And as I said, quite often people completely forget that they are there because they want that particular job, that they are enthusiastic. And
you shouldn't believe that that's a problem, right?
No, exactly. And enthusiasm, you can show it by your tone of voice, whatever. But you can also show it by being curious about the organization you're applying, curious, asking questions. I would say these are two ingredients that I noticed that people often forget a little, and maybe because they're tensed for the interview, so they are too much in their serious mode. And I think another thing is it takes two to tango. So if there isn't a match, no worries. Then there will come another match. I mean, it should resonate. So it should resonate on both sides. So I think so also in that way, see yourself as kind of equal to the organization you're applying for.
You basically describe an idea there from economic psychology that we call opportunity cost, where every choice you make comes at the cost of a decision you can't make. And it also comes, I guess, down to your career where, well, if you say yes to this job, you don't maybe know yet the next one that you could have, but that opportunity is for now gone because you've committed to this thing. That is also really interesting. Also something I forget way too often about the things that there are still out there. And maybe there's also something where I should realize sometimes where if I don't really feel this one particular thing 100%, maybe I should just let it be and wait a little bit and see what comes.
You're master of your own destiny.
That is true.
This is I stole this message from Capgemini, which I worked for many years for that organization. But you're a master of your own destiny. So you're not. So a lot of applicants, they tend to see themselves as very small, and the organization they're applying for, they're very big. But I mean, in the end, you're also a decision maker in the whole process. So.
And I mean, you also bring yourself to the organization, which means the organization is part just the way it is because of you, because of the people who work there. And I think maybe then it's good to bring your own character to it, because otherwise, well, I mean, who wants to work in a company where nobody likes to talk about anything because they're afraid to speak about anything?
That's right. So you're also saying, so it's important also to stay connected. And your values, to what resonates for you, to whatever it is.
So that's also then usually something you do help people in career coaching a lot to come up with their values and stuff, so they can
absolutely apply. But of course it can also go deeper than that. So I see maybe because I'm aged as well, but I get more and more women like around 50 years old who actually feel that we always speak about the glass ceiling, but they feel that they are capable of doing more, that they have the desire to do more, but that for some reason they feel blocked in their career. So
what do you think could that be? Like,
well, that is what I wanted to say. So there you also have a career coaching topic, which is and this is not only, in this case, not necessarily related to not being connected to your own values, etc., but it's more about self-acceptance. People, so about seeing yourself as a whole person, seeing yourself as someone who is capable. Quite often in our heads, we think, well, we may still feel like we still think we should perform in order to be liked or valued.
Like to get the confirmation from the outside.
So quite often there is also but I see that quite often hinders. So quite often hinders people when they're around 50 to make these few steps.
So in what way would you say is it different to younger people that come to you? Are the questions different that they have?
No, well, the baseline is simply no. It's quite often the same thing, lack of self-confidence or not accepting yourself fully. But no, in essence, it's the same.
Okay.
Yeah, in essence, I think my generation, we didn't really have coaches when we started our career. We didn't add, it was all different. What I notice is that people, now it's quite common when you're, let's say, 25 or 30 to have a coach or to be part of a leadership development program, whatever it is. So you're actually already encouraged to work on something like self-esteem, self-confidence. But I mean, today, if I look at especially the women from who are now between 50 and 60, they never really worked on that. So they still suffer with it.
I see.
And they do have ambitions, but they feel blocked.
Generally, you would say that for most people, in whether they're young, whether they're older, that career coaching can really help them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
And what are maybe some of the testimonies where the people that you worked with? Do you have a story in particular where you were like, oh, like somebody who came with me at the beginning who wasn't really sure about something, and then in a way they developed?
Yeah. Well, the nicest feedback that I ever received was from a guy from Ireland. He had a job in Amsterdam, and he lost his job due to reorganization. And he was totally disconnected from who he was, what he wanted, etc. So what came out of the coaching is that he returned to Ireland and to his hometown, in fact, and started building up a career that was much more based on doing online work, remote work, while enjoying, the beauty and the nature of where he lives. And he once told me, a couple of years later, every day I walk along a river, and each time that I walk along that river, I have to think of you, and I feel gratitude because you brought me here. Well, he brought himself there, of course. But I'm always, that was a lovely feedback. That's very,
of course,
very big.
Yeah, I mean, if you literally can say that you helped somebody so much that they almost every day have to think about that help, and that now their whole life has literally changed almost countries, and went overseas for that. It's actually quite amazing. It's beautiful. When you have a person like that is so thankful about it, I think it must also in some way give you... Is that also the reason why you choose coaching? Like these kind of things to really want you to help people?
Yeah, in essence, yes. I'm a harmony seeker, so I like peace. with all the good things about it and the bad things about it. But no, I'm surely a harmony seeker, and one of my bigger missions in life is to create a peaceful, society, world without aggression and war. And of course, that's a very big mission. But I see coaching as something that, my mission in my coaching is to support people with making resonant choices in life and work. Resonant choices that are in line with who you are, what you want in life, etc. So if you're at the right place, at the resonant place, doing your thing, whether privately or in work, most probably you will be peaceful.
Yeah. And how does that work sometimes?
So it's a small ripple, but I hope that this is what I hope that coaching brings. Yeah.
And how can that, for somebody who, let's say, has a similar vision, is that easily can you easily combine those things, like you want to strive for a peaceful life with having a career in a big corporation? Do you think those things can harmonize?
Absolutely. Yeah. As I said, something like violence, aggression, all comes from anger, frustration, and it all has to do, so this has to do with things in you, or things in a group or in a society that do not feel right or that are conflicting. So if we would all follow the resonance, we would have much less anger, frustration, etc. Yeah, this is how I actually see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think there was a beautiful last thing to step on and to leave with this. And thank you for the questions you answered. I think it was a very interesting conversation to have. Thank you so much.
More than welcome. Thank you.